Good late afternoon, everybody. Coming on a little late today, waiting to see the outcome of John Paul Miller going to court today. And I find it interesting. The beginning is already very interesting. So it seems that John Paul Miller was in court today in regards to the Sam Rickman case. He was one of the people that John Paul Miller had filed a lawsuit against back in January 10th to be exact. I was one of them as well. Excuse me, taking a sip of coffee. And it's funny because, there's a saying, and I can't remember exactly the words. I wish I should have looked it up, where when somebody, is their own attorney, they're a fool for a client. And so, of course, we know we're dealing with a fool already. John Paul Miller seems to be his own lawyer in this case. And I have to play it for you. I just have to read it to you. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read to you right now the update from News 13. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to go over actually the complaints that he had said against me in my lawsuit. I still have a copy of it, of course. And then we're going to go over a couple of things that I find very interesting. So let me get that for you real quick. Alrighty. So I'm just going to read it out loud to you in case you can see it. You can just read along. And this again is from WBTW. I tag them all the time in regards to the online protests. So I feel like they have an axe to grind with John Paul, and I don't blame them, but they covered this afternoon. So John Paul Miller, the former pastor of the now defunct Solid Rock Church in the Market Common, was in court in Myrtle Beach on Monday as jury selection began in a trial involving his harassment complaint against a former member of his congregation and close personal friend. Miller sued Sam Rickman in January, saying that he had engaged in a persistent pattern of harassment against Miller, including screaming and demonstrating against Miller's mere existence in public locations throughout Horry County. Rickman was among a dozen people at the center of legal action by Miller on harassment complaints, many of whom were affiliated with Justice for Micah movement, which grew out of the death of Miller's wife, Micah, in April of 2024. Micah Miller was found dead at Lumber River State Park near Lumberton on April 27, 2024. Authorities ruled her death a suicide, but a public outcry against Miller erupted in the months after her death amid allegations that he was too controlling and mentally abused Micah. Miller was never charged with a crime in her death. About a dozen protesters gathered in front of the Myrtle Beach Municipal Court complex before proceedings started around 11:30 a.m. Miller has alleged that harassment by Rickman and others has interfered with Miller's ability to earn a living, conduct church services, minister to his congregation, and maintain relationships with church members and the broader religious community, Miller said in his complaint. Rickman is being represented by Myrtle Beach-based attorney Regina Ward, while Miller opted to act as his own lawyer, saying in court he watched an entire season of the legal drama Suits to help prepare himself. Miller choked up during his opening statement, saying Rickman was loved and considered part of his family, even borrowing thousands of dollars at one point. He's a bully, Miller said. Not once did I try to get even with him. Ward refuted those claims, saying Rickman became disenchanted with Miller once the pastor began sharing private details of Micah's life from the pulpit. John Paul asked Magistrate Judge William Hudson to order that Ward be kinder in her remarks. On the stand, Rickman said John Paul got over Micah's death in about 2 weeks and then denied ever touching her inappropriately as John Paul questioned him. Rickman also testified that he didn't believe Micah's death was a suicide and that John Paul threatened that he'd have to repay his daughter $3,000 annual tuition. Ward has requested restraining orders against John Paul for Rickman, and this is a developing story. Yes, Suits. Yes, John Paul went to law school by watching Suits. Okay, now I want you to pay attention to a couple of things that are said here in this article because they're very important. If you notice, the focus is always money. It's always money. Okay? Just for John Paul, I've said that in the past. The focus is money. All right. Now, let me get, it's an image file. And we're going to start off. Now, I'm going to show you everything from my lawsuit, okay? Because I feel it's important. Now, this is the first page where somebody who was not supposed to serve me here, okay? And why? Because the address that's being used for me in this suit, which was deceptive, okay? This is the reason why he couldn't go through with this suit, because it's illegal. It's actually federally illegal to file a lawsuit fraudulently, and that's what he did. And he gave me an address of 1287 38th Avenue North in Myrtle Beach. I don't live in Myrtle Beach, never been in Myrtle Beach. I am not a resident of Myrtle Beach, never been a resident of Myrtle Beach, and he knows that. He knows that. This ended up having to be a Weight Watchers. So that was a dig. That was a dig at me, and that was a dig at my weight. Okay. Now, he says here, I believe because of the above information that I am entitled to and do request a judgment of $7,500 or other relief as below requested. Okay. Just remember that. January 10th, 2025. This guy's a pip, man. Okay, so let's start with the complaints. Now, mind you, I live in another state. I've never been there. Never. Okay? This is talking about me now. Defendant has engaged in a persistent pattern of harassment. Sound familiar? Against plaintiff, including posting or reposting statements about plaintiff on social media, which are intended to paint plaintiff in a false light and like a villain or criminal. Defendant regularly posts false and inflammatory videos or comments about plaintiff on social media, all of which cause plaintiff severe emotional distress and public humiliation. Defendant portrays herself, meaning me, as an advocate for victims of domestic violence or as someone who is investigating the death of plaintiff's late wife. Defendant, meaning me, seeks engagement with her posts on Facebook and TikTok in an effort to increase her views and standing in a sect of people who have assumed the role of attacking plaintiff online and in person. Mind you, and I stop right there. I've made dime one nothing on this entire Micah Miller and Chris Skinner case. Not a dime. Okay? Remember that. Number 5, defendant does not actually help victims of any violence. In fact, defendant only harasses and stalks the plaintiff through her posts, videos, comments, and actions. So I'm not sure what that means. Defendant does not actually help victims of any violence. But for some reason, that has to do with me harassing and stalking him through my posts, videos, comments, and actions. I didn't know he was a victim of violence. I had no idea. Number 6, defendant posts statements and videos about plaintiff where she describes him as a dangerous abuser, corrupt, and murderer, and plaintiff's late wife is a victim of his abuse and murder. Well, let's stop right there. I'm sorry, wasn't there an affidavit from Micah that said this about him already? Was I not repeating exactly his wife's words? Let's go on. Number 7, defendant's conduct is intended to harm plaintiff and enrich defendant through publicity, status, and fame in a group of like-minded stalkers and through the monetization of social media accounts, channels, and platforms. Let me say one more time. I do not monetize YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, anywhere, Twitter, Instagram, not a dime. Never have. So this is all a lie. Okay. Now just remember this, okay? This is all about money. All about money. This is very important, so stick with me. Okay, that was number 3. So I think that was number 3. Let me check. Okay, here we go. Defendant invaded plaintiff's right to privacy in one or more of the following ways: wrongfully appropriating plaintiff's personality. Okay, let's stop there. John Paul Miller talked about his own personality on the altar. All I did was break that down. So once again, either he's complaining about himself or, I don't know, maybe he's schizophrenic, not sure. Publicizing plaintiff's private affairs, which he's spoken about on the altar many times, which have no legitimate public concern, or wrongfully intruding into plaintiff's private affairs. Defendant's actions also violated South Carolina criminal statutes prohibiting harassment and stalking. Which ones? Which ones? When I give you a statute, I give you the number. I give you the code. Who filled this out? Mickey Mouse? Okay. Law enforcement officers have refused to enforce criminal statutes enacted to protect people like the plaintiff, leaving plaintiff no choice but to bring this action. Really? What law enforcement? I've never been there. See, he copied and pasted everybody's complaint. That's including Sam Rickman. If you look at Sam Rickman's initial, when he was first served, these same papers, it was copy and pasted word for word, same complaints. So the same complaints going against Sam Rickman are these complaints. As a direct and proximate result of defendant's actions, remember this now, plaintiff has suffered damages including emotional distress, reputational harm, anxiety, and other injuries in the amount to be proven, but not more than $7,500. Okay. Plaintiff incorporates by reference all proceedings paragraphs as if fully set forth herein. Defendant made false and defamatory statements concerning plaintiff. Specifically, defendants posted a video claiming the plaintiff groomed and trafficked his late wife. I'm sorry, didn't that come from Micah? Defendant published these statements to third parties by posting videos to TikTok and Facebook. The statements were false when made, and defendant knew or should have known they were false. Why would I know they were false? Why would I would have never said them if they were. The statements were defamatory per se, that they imputed to the plaintiff the commission of a crime and imputed to plaintiff serious sexual misconduct. Remember that. I want you to remember those words. Okay. All right. This is number 3. It's going to start getting interesting, I could see. See, I told you we were in a slump, and now we're back. Okay. You ready for this now? I hope you're sitting down. As a direct result of defendant's actions, I'm defendant, okay, remember that. Multiple church members have expressed reluctance to attend services and baptisms, and attendance and participation has declined. Stop right there. Number 1, almost 700 people stampeded out of that church right after Micah's death. That was April 27, 2024. I came on the scene mid-June. So this is a lie. But remember, he doesn't care about the deception. He's trying to build a false narrative to get money out of me. If he gets $7,500 out of all of us, he's making money. It's all about money. Defendant's actions have created a dangerous environment for plaintiff, placing him in fear for his safety and the safety of others. Really? Okay. Nothing being posted or stated about plaintiff by defendant is newsworthy or in the public interest. Well, all of you guys, that the 53 people that are here right now, do you find anything that's happened to Micah Miller newsworthy or interesting at all? Just wondering. Give me a yes if you find what happened to Micah Miller and Chris Skinner newsworthy or in the public's interest to know what happened to these people. Just waiting. Got one yes. Yes, justice for Micah. Yes. Yes, big yes. Big yes with a lot of exclamation points. Oh, Jamie gave 1 too. Thank you, Jamie. Absolutely been following from day 1. Yes, yes. Is he taking the stand now? Good. And we're going to keep up with that. We will be keeping up. We will be keeping up with it. Okay. Defendant engaged in a pattern of intentional, substantial, and unreasonable intrusion upon plaintiff's life. Defendant's actions serve no legitimate purpose and would have caused a reasonable person to suffer substantial emotional distress. Defendant intentionally intruded upon plaintiff's private affairs and concerns. Now, who called who? I intruded on him, yet he called my phone July 4th. I didn't invite him to call. I didn't ask him to call. He and I are not friends. We don't know each other. The intrusion would be highly offensive to a reasonable person. Well, we're not dealing with a reasonable person. Yep, July 4th, the day after I had reported on the potential of remote controlling Chris Skinner's chair. On July 3rd, I had reported on the potential of remote controlling any electronic wheelchair by hacking it. July 4th, the morning of July 4th, around 10 a.m., he called me. Defendant engaged in a pattern of words and conduct that served no legitimate purpose and caused plaintiff to reasonably fear for his safety and suffer substantial emotional distress. Now, the reason why he keeps bringing up the emotional distress is because punitive damages can bring a lot of money to somebody. See, if he would have won this, he could have really went and said, oh, the damages, and have gone after even more powerful people, maybe the mainstream media. Okay, so that's number 4. Okay. And then we're gonna trust the process. Please trust the process. Okay. Now remember, I'm the defendant. Much of defendant's conduct is carried out under the guise that she is seeking justice for plaintiff's wife and protesting domestic violence. When did I protest? Anybody see me at the protest? Please raise your hand. A crime that plaintiff was never charged with committing and for which there is no factual basis. Well, you are under federal investigation at the time that you filed this suit, so I'd have to beg to differ. The interest that a subjective people has in plaintiff and in the life of his late wife was created entirely by the defendant, me. I did that. And others like her who have determined on their own that plaintiff is guilty of a crime that law enforcement officials have cleared him of or never charged him with committing. Not yet. Defendant has published false and defamatory statements about plaintiff on various social media platforms. So we're just now repeating, including Facebook and TikTok, to damage plaintiff's reputation and interfere with his livelihood and ministry. So we circled right back around to what, ladies and gentlemen? Money. Remember that. Money, 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 money. Okay. Defendant's actions have been calculated to intimidate or influence others from congregating at plaintiff's church or with plaintiff in any setting. Now remember, this was his way of making money. This was his way. Defendant's dissemination of false information, harassment, intimidation of plaintiff and those associated with him have interfered with plaintiff's ability to live his life without interference from defendant or others who are influenced by defendant's actions. As a direct result of defendant's actions, friends and acquaintances of plaintiff have expressed reluctance to be seen with plaintiff or to do business with plaintiff or his affiliated companies. Once again, we circle back to money. Defendant's harassment and intimidation of plaintiff and those associated with him have interfered with plaintiff's ability to earn a living, conduct church services, minister to his watch. It could be anything. Let's see. It was number 5. And here we go. To his something, because it ends there and doesn't finish. And to last but not least, plaintiff is entitled to damages against defendant in an amount not to exceed $7,500 for this case. Okay, so it actually didn't finish there. I don't know what happened, but there you go. Now it's all about money. Money, 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 money. All right. I want you to remember, and I could play it for you again if you want to be reminded. In Truth Drip number 22, which was the last one, this witness came forward and talked about how Susie kept saying she was about to receive a large amount of money. Okay? You remember that, right? I can actually play that for you if you need to see it. What I want to open here for you, real quick, is Allison's affidavit. And there's just portions of it. I'm going to have to read this from the phone. There's just portions of it. But in these portions, there's things that are very important here. In number 14, in her affidavit, she says, JP began spending time with his now paramour, Susie, who is the mother of one of the boys that plays on our son's soccer team. JP began using our son to facilitate times he could spend with Susie which our children were well aware of. Their friends talked about it, and it caused them a tremendous amount of embarrassment. When I learned JP was exposing our children to yet another one of his adulterous affairs, I confronted JP and Susie and told them not to let it happen again. JP called me the day Susie's husband died in an alleged drowning accident, extremely upset and asking me to pray, which was incredibly bizarre. Based upon information and belief, just 2 weeks prior to this incident, Susie's husband had confronted John Paul and asked him to leave his wife and children alone. It is chilling to know that the spouses of both Susie and JP are now dead from tragic events. Number 15, it was around this time JP's mental health seemed to be really spiraling out of control, and he began acting even more bizarre. This is 2021. He informed me that he was getting into buying guns and shooting and had purchased a gun safe for his home. As a convicted felon, he is not allowed to have weapons. However, he managed to get a police chief from the church to assist with expunging his record. Further, he was given a special police badge that says pastor to utilize if he ever gets pulled over, so they will let him go. With the constant divorce between JP and Mike and JP's own self-reported mental health struggles, the thought of JP having access to guns in the home terrified me for the safety of our children. Number 16, it was about this time JP began declining to pick up our children for visitation, informing me that his mental health was not well enough for him to share time with them. Of course, given the circumstances, I would have refused to let them go. However, having it be JP's idea made it far easier and safer and prevented the necessity of filing a legal action with the court. One counselors and people to assist her. I prayed with Micah and did all I could to provide her with sound advice and guidance. Micah shared information with me about the things my children were exposed to while in the care of JP and warned me that my children were in danger while in his care. I have several recordings and text messages that verify this information, and it causes me tremendous concern about the safety and welfare of our children while in the care of JP, especially now that Micah is no longer present. I was married to JP for 16 years. Although my story and what I lived through with JP is different in some ways, many of the details shared with me by Micah are so similar to my own experiences with JP that I know she was being truthful based upon information and belief. JP's mental health and deviant sexual addictions have only worsened since the time we were married, and I do not believe our children are safe in his care. Now, I'm going to stop there. I'm going to stop there. Well, let me go. Wait, hold on. Let me go a little further. I'm sorry. Forgive me. Number 20, and this is the end. Since Micah's death, I've requested that JP not see our children. Initially, I was okay with phone calls and text messages. However, when recently texting with them, JP has inappropriately discussed the current state of events with them, where he had said, and this is what he was discussing, suing everyone and being a millionaire. Okay, that was very important. Our children do not need to be subjected to any discussion about the current situation. Remember that, suing everyone and being a millionaire. I want you to remember those words. For their privacy and protection, I have refrained from making any public statements or comments. Our children are highly upset and do not wish to have contact with their father, which at this time I strongly believe is in their best interest. My goal is not to keep our children from their father permanently, but until such time as he can undergo adequate psychological testing following all recommendations to ensure his mental stability and ensure contact with their father is in their best interest. Currently, JP is being threatened and followed on social media by people from around the world. Placing our children in that situation and subjecting them to social media coverage or involvement is simply not in their best interest. Okay. Now, I agree with her. That I do understand. Wanting to protect her children. But I want you to hear how many times money is brought up by John Paul Miller. It's always about money. He came after us regarding money in these lawsuits. Now this going on with Sam Rickman. Copied and pasted every single one of our lawsuits pretty much with the same complaint that we had harassed him on social media, came up with lies about him, made up these stories. What's funny is we reported on the very same things that was reported mainly by mainstream media, and yet he didn't file any suits, as far as I know, against them. Okay? Not even against the bigger creators. Not against Robbie Harvey, not against Steph, not against JLR, none of the big ones, the ones that can afford an attorney. Okay, only the little ones so that he could get money. He thought he could get money. He thought he could. Didn't realize that some of us would figure out that by using false names and false addresses that he had already, filed fraudulent lawsuits, which is against the law and could have gotten him in a lot of trouble. So there was that. Now, why do I bring up the money? So as I said again, if you want me to play number 22, I can. Let me actually, you know what? Let me get it. Why mention it? Let's just do it. Because it needs to be said. It needs to happen. It needs to be done because this fits in. This fits in with the money and my belief on why we've lost Chris Skinner. All right, let me go here. Number 22. And I've spoken to Tamara. She was very busy last week working on the end of her courses. She's looking now to go into dissertation, and that's a lot of work. And so there are more drips to come. But this one is very important. I want you to pay attention to what the witness is saying here. Okay, here we go.
she had a major crush on him. She said that she wanted to be with him. She said that JT felt like they were destined to be together by God. God told him that him and Susie were to be together, which also gives me the creeps because now that I know that I just said, it's like, wait just a second here. Two people that were in the picture legally preventing these two from being together, basically, are now dead. No. Nope.
You're going to have to forgive me. It's the wrong one. Damn it. It's 21. Okay. Well, that is important. It is important. So it's 21. Sorry, guys. Bear with me. We're doing this.
I took control, went solo, and built my own online knife empire.
Okay. I promise you this is the one. But that is important. So it's not as if it was not important to show. All right. Here we go.
So after he passed away, she would talk to me about the life insurance policy and that she was standing to get a lot of money, and that she had to go up to the hospital and she had to do a lot of fighting with a lot of nurses for a lot of reasons, and she was always mad about it. And she said to me that she's going to keep working because even though she's getting a lot of money.
Let's stop right there. Let's stop right there, ladies and gentlemen. So now let's tie everything together with a bow. You ready? Okay. So I just laid out for you by reading my own lawsuit, the same complaints throughout. Every protester, Sam Rickman now, who is right now going through the court thing with John Paul, and God bless him for countersuing. The same complaint he had against me, okay, seeking money. It was all about money. Money he lost, money he wasn't getting, money he needed, figuring by claiming punitive damages that were caused by us, he would get $7,500 per person. Now, and that was 10 people at the time that he went after. All right. 2021, Chris passes away. According to Allison, John Paul calls him. She says this is very bizarre that he calls her. John Paul calls Allison, says, please pray because this happened to Chris and he passed away and blah, 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 whatever he said to her on the phone. Allison, knowing him for many years, found this bizarre. Okay, I'm going to take her word for it. She claims that in the aftermath of all of it, this is around the time, these are her words, when his mental health started to decline, where he started to buy guns. 2021 now we're in, okay? He also starts this affair with, or we believe the affair was already going on. And why? Because this witness is saying it was. That before Chris's passing, God is saying that they were meant to be together. This is John Paul's words, okay? Susie's playing it quiet and casual, okay? But John Paul, who has a big mouth, is telling this to Susie, that God said they were meant to be together. So obviously, pre-Chris's death, they're seeing each other, okay? John Paul, when he's not doing well with money, and what was going on 2020, 2021? What would have caused there to be some sort of an issue with money back in that time? Well, if you remember, a lot of churches had shut down because of the pandemic. And so we know from John Paul's own words that if people aren't coming to the church, they're not paying tithes, they're not paying offering, and this affects the money that goes in his pocket. He doesn't know how long this is going to last. He's used to getting, and I remember this from my own lawsuit, that he claimed in the lawsuit, and I should find that for you, and I will if you want me to show it to you, where he was getting $100,000 a month, and now it went down to $10,000 a month. And I know you guys remember me saying that many times, kind of joking about it. But for him, it was a substantial loss. Now, in 2020, when they were shutting down churches, and he and Skinner are seeing each other, him and Susie, it's obvious because they're admitting, or at least she's saying to this witness, that John Paul is saying, God said that we should be together pre-Chris's passing. Pre-Chris's passing, she admits to a witness, Shonda, that she's attracted John Paul, wants to be with John Paul, and wishes Chris would just die already so she could move on. This is pre-Chris's death. What am I getting at? Remember that the police never showed us through FOIA. I know I would be too, Sarah. Remember that through the FOIA, they gave us what they wanted to give us, and never did they give us the footage of Chris coming into the pool area, going over to the chess sets, and then going from the chess sets over to where we see him. And why? Why? Because we would probably be able to figure out by watching that footage that he was not controlling his chair. He was not in control of his chair. That's why he didn't stand up in the water with the chair that had that ability. Okay, we've gone over that. So what would we talk about all of this for? Even though she's getting a lot of money, she was going to keep on working. I will. If you guys want to send me a link on Facebook, I will absolutely do it. If you want to send it to me, I will absolutely do it. Just send it to me on Facebook, and if it's there, I will grab it. Anyhow, let me get past what I'm trying to say. I believe that they made it an accident. Okay, we know that it was not an accident. The claim was that his chair got so close to the pool that the wheel slipped and fell in. We know by looking at that video that's not what happened. It was never investigated to see if that's what really happened, because that was part of the narrative. She stands to get a lot of money. So I think what she did was she lined the pockets of people to stay quiet and allowed this narrative to go, forward so that Susie could collect that money. And who do you think got control of that money? I'm not going to go searching for it right now, guys. I'm in the middle of a show. So if you want to send it to me, just send it to me. I'm not, or I'll have to come back tomorrow and go over it. The point is, and of course he's talking about money. Of course he's talking about money. It's always been about money. I believe that John Paul Miller and Susie commiserated over the churches being shut down, him getting a loss of money because the churches were shut down over the pandemic, her being upset that she had to take care of him because she stopped taking care of him, and being subjected to caring for him didn't want to do it anymore. And so somehow they justified. And then, of course, John Paul has that conversation. This witness comes forward and says they're there for this conversation, this creepy conversation about remote controlling Chris's chair. The bald-headed guy so conveniently is standing by the gate to let Chris in that morning. He says it. It's in the report. Read it. It's in the report that he happened to have been by the gate at that time and allowed Chris in. Like it was all planned out. And then as soon as he got to where the chess set was, that was where he was able to be controlled into the pool. And as long as they were able to say, well, he took his medication that morning instead of the night before, he was very sleepy, fell asleep in the chair, so he slipped into the pool. It was an accident. Accident is double indemnity. So she stands to get a lot of money. And this goes into both Susie and John Paul's pocket. Now we have to start working on Micah. We have to start telling people constantly over and over again, there's something wrong with her, something wrong with her, something wrong with her. Oh, she's suicidal. Oh my God, she's seeing demons, she's playing chess with demons, she's throwing snakes and it's a belt, and all these stories. Making sure that he puts out that narrative that Micah's sick, Micah's sick, Micah's sick. So that when the day comes to get rid of her, they're free and clear. I believe both Chris and Micah's deaths were premeditated, is my point. Thank you, Matthew. Okay. All right, let me. Is this a video or a post? Okay, let me get it for you guys. And I hope you guys can see it. I hope I'm explaining this to where you see what I'm trying to explain. I really believe, or trying to lay out for you. I really believe that Chris was taken out for the money. The physician's appointment the year before, the lack of care, the statements that Susie made to friends, the statement that John Paul is making to Susie about that they were meant to be together. Let me get this here. Okay, it's a short little It's a short little excerpt, so let me get that for you. Okay. Let's see. Attorney Regina Ward cross-examines John Paul Miller, highlights Miller reveals his new wife, Susie Miller, is helping him pay for things. He adds Susie is helping him grieve and denies any affair with Susie. Ward questions how much money Miller lost because of Rickman, and he couldn't give an answer. Miller claims the FBI gave him a heads up weeks before the FBI searched his home last year. Miller reveals they could have avoided the trial by shaking hands and Rickman apologizing. The judge says he will rule in contempt if Miller accuses Ward of being a liar after a third time. Miller admits he filed more than 30 lawsuits recently. Miller claims he's had to move his church 3 times because protesters keep following him and that they demand money and will stop if they get paid. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you for sending me that. So let's see here. Miller reveals his new wife, Susie Miller, is helping him pay for things, in parentheses. You saw what I just had on. You saw what I had just had on the screen. She stands to make a lot of money. Okay? I'm telling you that this is all tied in. And even Allison says it's odd that both, and even the witness said the same, both the spouses of these two people are gone. I believe Chris is gone because there was a payout. I believe Micah is gone because she knew too much and she was in the way. Now, I have no idea if there's any sort of life insurance on Micah. That's never been said. Nobody's ever confirmed that, but I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised because this is all about money for John Paul Miller. Susie's that stupid. This is all about money. And the fact that his mental health declining at the same time he's turning around and deflecting that on Micah just to build a narrative against her, so to easily get rid of her, which is what he did. No, the protesters do not want his money. He has never offered anybody money to be quiet or to stop, as far as I know. He's a liar. You remember that scripture that talks about your father is the father of lies? You know, let me see if I can find that scripture. Why not? Scriptures about the father of lies. And that's all he knows to do is to lie. John 8, you are of your father, the devil, and the desires of your father you want to do. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth because there is no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own resources, for he is a liar and the father of it. That's John Paul Miller. He lies. He's not mentally well, according to his ex-wife, who's known him the longest. I have to, and now I hope I tied this in for all of you. If I didn't, please forgive me, because it's a lot. But I'm trying to show you that his main focus, Susie's main focus was to get rid of Chris and to be with a guy like John Paul. That was her focus. His focus was to get his hands on the money, any money. And again, remember, 2020, 2021, churches were closed. Churches were losing money. Even if they went online, even if they went on YouTube and they were doing, services online, a lot of people weren't working. A lot of people weren't going to work. So they were having their own financial issues. So that he wasn't making that $100,000 a month that he's used to making. And so he was probably in financial duress to some degree. And here you get rid of, and all you have to do is just get rid of this poor guy who has a life insurance on him. And there you go. And now we're going to focus now on Micah. And I'm going according to what Allison is saying. It's not something I made up in my head. She's even saying all the complaints that Micah has said against John Paul Miller were pretty much true. She knows they're true because she went through some of them herself. So that's where I'm going to end, guys. I hope I was able to lay this out for you. Well, JMW, I don't know. Let me get rid of this. It seems like the entire legal system in that area is a mockery of law enforcement, the court system, of the legal law, the whole industry. They have no respect for the law. They have no respect for what's right. They have no respect for God. They have no respect for women. It's all about money and corruption. This petition that's going around against what's her name, the deputy coroner. is because I believe, and I'm saying it from my own words, I'm not going to speak for anybody else, that she was placed there so that she could protect the people who need to get rid of somebody for whatever reason. Whether it be for money, Willard, thank you. Whether it be for money or whether it be for to protect themselves from being exposed, or even if it's just plain revenge, she's there to make sure that nothing comes back and bites them in the rear end. And so that's what I believe. That's absolutely what I believe. Yeah, I hope so, Amelia. That's what I was really trying to do. I'm trying to lay out what the intentions are. And to me, it just seems like John Paul's intentions, no matter whether it be from the affidavit from Allison or it be from my own lawsuit, which again, like I said, was copy and paste, and everybody's lawsuit was the same, or going all the way to Susie. And then looking at the timing of Chris's death and how a year before you're talking about in 2020, is when Susie stops caring for Chris. Okay. So, and at the same time, simultaneously sends him to a physician to get a life insurance physical exam, which I've told you guys many times as a previous examiner. The life insurance policy has to be substantial for that to be paid for by the insurance company. And she's saying in her own words to this witness, I stand to get a lot of money. You tie that up with John Paul saying to Chris, hey, how can I remote control your chair? And then 2 weeks before his passing, here's Allison saying, Chris says, stay away from my wife and kids. John Paul himself on the altar had told a story about being at a church service, okay? He said he was sitting in the front, and a man came up to him. Now, I don't know if he's talking about Chris or somebody else. Could be Chris, I don't know. But he claims that, I don't know if you guys remember this story, guy came up to him and said the very same thing, stay away from my wife and kids. And John Paul said he turned around, clocked him in the face. Right there in church. I don't know if you guys remember that story. It was John Paul Miller that told it. Why would I make that up? I don't know this guy from a can of paint. So John Paul does not like being challenged. We already know this about the Millers. They get challenged. They look for revenge. They don't care that God says vengeance is mine. They skip that part of the Bible. They cherry pick. As Chris said, they cherry pick the Bible. They only pick up the parts that work for them. We already know John Paul is a wolf. We already know that he uses the church as a money-making scheme. He's already said in my lawsuit that I've affected his businesses, plural. Okay, so the church is not his main focus. The gospel is not his main focus. Making money is. And anybody that gets in his way, he's going to try to remove them, which is what he did to Micah. So what we're going to do is I'm going to keep an eye out on this story and how things go in court. If you guys come across stuff and you're like, hey, I wonder if Ann has seen this, please feel free to send it to me. Let me give you my email address, and I'm going to put it up here so that if you're like, oh God, what was her address again? It'll be right here on the show. You could just come back to the show and look and see that it's EEU6780 @protonmail.com. He told Guru he's not a religious man. The devil knows the words to use to get real Christians to listen. And what he's trying to make it sound like is he has a relationship with God, but he's not a religious Pharisee. No, he's not a Pharisee at all. He's absolutely right. He's a wolf. We'll put him in his right perspective. We'll put him in his proper perspective. He's not a Pharisee. Pharisees are very overly holy. Everything is, you know what I mean? They use religion to pretty much punish people. You know, they're very harsh in their alleged holiness. No mercy, no grace. He's on the opposite side of that spectrum. He's totally into mercy and grace. And, you know, here's Allison saying that he's a sexual deviant. This sexual deviant is on the altar preaching the word of God and willingly and happily collecting tithe and offering from people who are seeking God. He has no idea what kind of price he's going to pay. And as we can see, he is still defending himself as he is. There's no repentance in this man. None whatsoever. Because if I'm not mistaken, let's remember Sam Rickman was the one who worked on the media. If I'm not mistaken, if I am wrong, please correct me. And so if I'm not mistaken, if it were not for Sam Rickman, none of us would have even seen him John Paul give that announcement of Micah's death. And this would have all never started. So that's his bone to pick with Sam Rickman, if I'm not mistaken. So there you go. Anyhow, it all ties in. I don't believe for 1 minute that the FBI told him weeks before that they were going to come and raid his house. I think he's full of crap. He's not so special at the FBI. And I'll tell you what, if the FBI in Myrtle Beach did that, they will be one of the agents that are removed by Kash Patel. Don't think that the feds aren't watching any of these shows. So if that's a true statement, John Paul Miller just got that FBI agent fired. So I'm just letting you know that now. Anyway, guys, we will keep on this. We will keep our eyes on this court case. We will also keep our eyes out for new truth drips that Tamara had promised. If by chance Tamara is too busy to do, and understandably so, she is doing a dissertation, and she's not able to put out any new truth drips, I planned on doing a show where we were going to cover every drip from the first one to the last one. And so I will let you guys know what happens with that. I also made, over the weekend, my husband made a new video, and to Tamara's request, we added, we're not going to take it from Twisted Sister. If you've seen that video, please do us a favor and share it. It's in regards to the petition and the website that the petition is on, which also mentions all of the news stations that covered it and the truth drips as well. And it's also covering not just Chris Skinner, but also Scott Spivey. So we're going after removing this corrupt deputy coroner as well. Also, if you keep your eyes out for the online protests, anybody who has been sharing it, I thank you for sharing it. Anybody that hasn't shared it, please share it. If you're unable to share it, please keep in touch with your FBI office or DOJ or Attorney General, and let them hear your voice. Let them hear the names Micah Miller, Chris Skinner. So until I'm able to come, I'm sure something new will come up soon. But until I see you guys again, please stay safe. Please stay in Psalm 91 in the Lord's Prayer. Until I see you again, stay safe and God bless.